Hello, and welcome to Creepycore and Folklore, the show about creatures, encounters, old tales, and myths. I'm your host, Iona Wayland, a dark fantasy author, mental health professional, and overall curious person. I want to join other spooky souls and hear about these unusual stories. All right, episode 2. This is going to be a two-parter, specifically focusing on things that freaked me the hell out when I was a kid. And there are lots of those things, so I'm sure I'm going to be making many more episodes about things that freaked me the hell out, which really isn't difficult to do. But these two particular things were ones that are related to my Latina roots specifically. And if there are other Latine or Latinx folks out there, I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to relate to this. So the first one I want to talk about is El Chupacabra. And I'm sure that people have heard about this. And when I started to research it, I realized that the origination of it was really not long ago. It was in 1995, and I was born in 1994, so no wonder I remember certain things growing up and hearing about this and then being afraid of it. I also partially lived in downtown Baltimore as well as Appalachia, both kind of at the same time because I have a split up family. And so it was just weird that on the one hand, I would hear about these folk tales, these horror stories. And on the other hand, I would be worried I would actually experience them in the woods. So with El Chupacabra, it actually originated in Puerto Rico in 1995. Well, technically 1994 to 1995, there were these sightings of not the actual chupacabra, but the animals, the livestock. There were farmers that said that usually their goats or sometimes sheep and maybe even sometimes larger livestock like cows would have these puncture wounds in their necks or 2 or 3 puncture wounds in their stomachs and were seemingly drained of blood. So in Canavanas, there were all these reports showing up, and one woman named Madeline Tarantino, I think that's her name, she reported actually seeing the creature, and she spotted it, and she said it looked like a 3-foot tall, humanoid person that was short and scaly. Maybe even had little arms, like T-Rex arms. And it had spines from the tip of its head down its back, and leathery skin, and bat-like wings, and large eyes the size and shape of hen's eggs. And when she came forward with this, more and more people started seeing El Chupacabra. Now, what's strange about this is not the depiction that I was familiar with. So when I was looking it up, I was like, well, how did the depiction of this change? Or how did I come up with this? Because I could be making it up. I don't know. I was a kid. So as I delved deeper, it turns out that the depiction actually changed. But this original depiction shows up and was very specific, and people started to wonder if it was an escaped alien from a government facility, or speculated that maybe it was escaped monkeys from experiments. Lots of escaped something or the other creature from somewhere that people couldn't explain. And so I know that I said just a second ago, this is not how I envisioned it. Turns out how I envisioned it came from the 2000s, which makes more sense because I was the age that I would have been hearing about these things. And this is the visual I got. So in the 2000s, as the legend or the myth or the sightings of El Chupacabra kept showing up, it moved up the east coast of the Americas. And I forgot to say earlier, but El Chupacabra means goat sucker. So it started with like, there's this thing running around like eating livestock animals, which is really scary. So the one I heard about and was fearful of was described as being really thin and a four-legged creature, like one that walks on all fours instead of the humanoid form. It was described as being hairless and having really thick, leathery skin. It also was shown to have like a longer snout. So instead of like the humanoid face, it had like a dog-like snout to it. And it only had a few patches of hair. Like, I know I said it was hairless, but like more like hairless on the body. And then like from the crown of its head down its back or on its hackles, it would have like sharper, like patchy hair. And this one, even though the visual of it was different, the attacks were still the same. So it was still attacking livestock. And some of them were as large as horses and cows in the middle of the night. And that would leave the farmers or the rural folks finding their beloved animals like seemingly drained of blood. However, something finally changed when a few people said that they had found the carcass of El Chupacabra and called for someone to check it out. And so I believe it was like veterinary personnel, but they did like DNA tests and stuff. And we were actually able to figure out what it was. So it turns out that a lot of these Chupacabra sightings were actually raccoons, possibly mongooses, maybe foxes, definitely a lot of coyotes and wild dogs were like affected by mange. And so this was almost turned into like a debunked phenomenon, which I didn't know about that. And I'm sure there's still people who see El Chupacabra or like think that there's something weird going on, because I know that there can be weird stuff going on at like farms or in the woods, like unexplained things. But that by knowing this, these animals that were afflicted with mange had the appearance of that four-legged, long-snouted creature. So they were able to figure out that that is what these sightings were, and they had been possibly attacking the livestock. They also found that a lot of the livestock that were seemingly drained of blood actually had blood pool into different parts of their body. So when their chest cavity or neck cavity was explored, there wasn't blood there, but it's because it had dissipated into other parts of their bodies. It hadn't drained from them naturally. I know this is like super gross. Also, the original woman who stated that she had seen what she'd seen had, I guess, like been questioned about this particular movie. I think it was like a horror sci-fi movie called Species that was shown in 1995, and she had said that she had seen that movie like 2 weeks prior to the sighting or something like that. I don't want to discount what she saw, and at the same time it's good to note like maybe she was thinking about that a lot, and that's what informed her of what she saw, was that really scary thing she'd seen on TV. Now, even though I logically know the aftermath of these things, like I know now most likely what was causing these deaths were mangy animals that were really sick, I'm still petrified of it to this day. And what's really funny is that it's not like that old of a monster. It's like, it's not a super old cryptid. It's something that is fairly recent. Whereas these other cryptids, you can trace them back sometimes hundreds of years sometimes even a couple thousand years, depending on what you're looking at in the folklore and mythology. But this, like, I don't know, 27, 28-year-old monster is still really creepy to me. And there's a couple reasons why it affected me personally. One is because, like I mentioned before, I lived on a farm in Appalachia and we had horses, and I still have two horses to this day. One's a rescue and the other one's retired. They're great. But I would have to help my uncle and cousins with sometimes animals that they had found that had been attacked in the middle of the night. And it's really horrifying to see the dead body of a beloved animal or a livestock animal, even if you don't have that personal connection to them. And they had a lot of goats. And unfortunately, every single year, there would be goats that were attacked by something in the middle of the night. Now, logically, I know that it is most likely a coyote, potentially a bear, I guess, maybe even a mountain lion, because those are still around. But like, it could even be as small as something called a fisher cat, which isn't a cat. It looks like a giant weasel. They're not even supposed to exist there. They're kind of like invasive, but whatever. So it could be any of these predators. But the not knowing is really scary, and finding like a horrific scene and being really afraid of how your animal passed and was attacked is really, really sad. And it can be traumatizing. So that was something that came to mind for me, is how it affected me directly. Like, it's called the goat sucker, and I would help my cousins and uncle out with their goat farm. I also have had 2 occasions where I've had to protect my horses against a very, very sick coyote. So usually coyotes travel in packs, and unfortunately, when one is very ill, especially with mange, because mange is contagious to other coyotes. And there's even this one particular type of mange. I don't know if coyotes can get it though. I know that I've helped dogs with this before, demodectic mange, which is a mange that isn't contractable to other dogs, but is like really difficult to get rid of, and you have to give them these special dip baths and to get rid of it, and it's really hard on the animal, but they can recover from it. But when it's a wild animal and they have mange, it's really difficult to know like what to do in that situation other than to report it to the like DNR. And this stands for the Department of Natural Resources. And something like that, which we've had to do before. Like, my whole family's had to do that kind of thing before. So it's just really strange when you see such an ill wild animal. They don't look right. They don't act right. And my rescue horse, Orion, is an Appaloosa. He's very cute. He's a pony. Not a mini pony, just like the regular size pony. But he got this really, really bad like leg laceration, and don't worry, I'm not gonna like deeply describe it, but it was a wound that I had to clean regularly. And even though I kept the bandages in a trash can in the house, and I was like not leaving things places, and I was making sure to put the medicine on it, it still had the wound smell that I guess a lot of wild animals could smell. And this particular coyote was alone, which is very strange. It was missing chunks of its hair, and it was creeping up on him during the day, which is just like really upsetting to see an animal that emboldened, especially a predatory animal. So what we decided to do, and I had to look up how to do it, was you take like bacon and you wrap it around a water balloon with like something that smells bad, like something that like doesn't taste very good, but it also doesn't harm the animal. I forget what we used. I think it was like some sort of like non-toxic cleaner that just had like a really strong like smell that was like unpleasant for, I guess, dogs slash coyotes specifically. That, and we used some mothballs because apparently they don't like mothballs either. I don't know if that's just a wives' tale, but we used it. And so when we wrapped the bacon around the water balloon filled with like water mixed with like a yucky smell or lemon juice, like straight up lemon concentrate, but I really can't. I need to look up what we did because it was really helpful. Because what happens is that coyotes are so smart, and they know how to like navigate everything, and they know the woods like really well. It's their home. So what it does is apparently it's like a negative punishment for the predatory animal, where it'll go towards the smell of the like raw bacon, that raw meat, and it'll bite into it, and it pops the balloon, and it makes that taste bad. And they're like, oh, I thought that would taste good, but it tastes really bad. Everything in this area is now no good. And so that taught the coyote not to eat my horse, because during the day the coyote came real stinking close, and during night we'd leave the lights on, but it was just like my horse recovering with the rest of the herd, like able to move around and get away, but he was just by himself, like kind of like kept in place so he wouldn't mess with his leg, so he wouldn't move too much. So that was really scary. So that was just one time. This other time was years prior. I had a beautiful leopard Appaloosa barrel racing horse. He was my rodeo guy, and I competed on him before his retirement, and he lived to be, I think, 32, may have been 31, but he definitely surpassed 30. And he had this issue where one of his front legs was lame during the winter, and we had gotten it looked at by the farrier, and the vet said it was totally fine and told me what to do with it. Man, my horses and their legs and feet, I swear. But so he was, his name was Speck, which I know, super original for leopard Appaloosa. Just to help you visualize it, is a giant horse, but like with Dalmatian type spots, like white body, black spots. So I think they're really pretty. Very unique spotted horse, and I loved him very much. But I noticed that there was this like weird, like breathy, sniffy sound outside of my window, and I couldn't see anything. So I turned on the light, and when I turned on the light, the really mangy, very sick coyote like skirted away, and I knew that it was there, and it was the yuckiest feeling. Like, it was so freaking scary to run out there to my horse that was not able to like stick too close to the herd, or like if the herd would run away, he wouldn't be able to run very quickly, to know that he was getting plucked off by like a by itself coyote, and that like kind of has nothing to lose and is already looking very ill. And so what I did was I ran back inside as fast as I could. I grabbed one of those like foghorn things, like the nee nee nee. You know what I'm talking about, hopefully. They're obnoxious. And so I ran out with the air horn, and I blasted it. And actually, like, my horse was like, yeah, whatever, like, because he was so trained and he was so chill about everything. I mean, he could be nuts when I was competing with him, because that was like his job and he got adrenaline from it. But around the air horn, he was fine. But the coyote was like, what the hell was that? And just like ran away and never came back. But that was so scary, because it's like, what do you do? What do you do? Here is this beloved animal, and here is a wild, sick animal that doesn't look right. Like, I totally get people saying like, oh, This is nothing I've seen before. It's El Chupacabra. It ate my goats. Like, the goats died in such a weird way. Like, I came home or woke up in the morning and saw that something had stalked and eaten my animal. Like, that is really, really scary, especially when there's really not a lot you can do about it and you try and protect your animals as best you can. Luckily, that's the end of my run-ins with my own chupacabra. But I get why this was really scary, and especially the fact that it was so popularized, for lack of a better word, when I was a kid. It makes sense that that was one of my fears. So it's funny too, because in my Hollowverse dark fantasy series, I like to include some of my worst fears. And as I do more research into like these myths, legends, cryptids, and like strange encounters with otherworldly things, I'm noticing that I'm just like petrified of this stuff. And so I included a lot of these themes in my work, and definitely El Chupacabra shows up in a way in my book. But so if you're interested in that, you can, my information is in the show notes and also in the outro of my episodes here. So the next one I want to lead into is something that I think a lot of Latine folks will recognize. And that's the story of La Llorona. And like, I was always afraid she'd come to me at night and steal me away, or like my siblings. And I was just like, this is nuts. Like, what is going to happen if this person shows up and snatches someone away? But what's strange is that I never knew where it came from. Like, La Llorona means the weeping woman. And I was like afraid to hear her crying. I thought she would like drag me into a river, and I wasn't like specifically told that that would happen, but sometimes it was used as like, oh, you don't want her to get you, like you don't want her to find you, you have to listen to your parents or your grandparents or she's going to get you. And I'm just like, who is this woman and why does she hate children so much? But I found that the origin story of La Llorona is really, really dark. So here's how the story goes, and then I'll talk about why this was so terrifying. Although I'm sure you can come to your own conclusions why this was so horrifying. So this story centers around a woman named Maria, and she lived in Mexico. She was described as being like a poor woman or a peasant or a child of peasants. And as she grew, she developed into this beautiful, like heart-stopper, gorgeous woman. And all social classes were attracted to her, so the tale goes, because her beauty was just so great that it just like, which I'm just thinking, like, someone who's like poor or below the poverty line doesn't mean they're unattractive. So I don't know why that was told in such a way, but whatever, it's a folktale. So apparently she caught the eye of this very wealthy, very handsome man named Armando. And Armando fell deeply in love with her. I would like to argue and say he fell in love with her beauty, but whatever. Or the idea of her, but whatever. So he, like, pined for her, tried to get her attention. She was like really humble and modest and was like, I don't know if I could ever, like, I'm just like a very poor social class person and you're a very wealthy man, and I don't know if this could possibly work out. So she just kind of like kept to herself, but he kept like writing her ballads and taking her on dates, like courting her and like schmoozing the family. And so finally he asked her to marry him, and she said yes. And so for a little while, I think for a couple years, they had a really good marriage, and she even had 2 children with him. But then as she was like getting more comfortable, he actually had a wandering eye and would cheat on her with other people. And finally, it wasn't just like a couple flings here and there. he started really courting this much wealthier, like within his same social class woman. And when he would come back, like he kind of left her, but when he would come back, he would only focus on the children and he wouldn't even talk or look at Maria. So what happened was he finally was like, I want to leave you, and I wish I'd never had children with you. I wish I'd never seen you. I'm with this super rich lady with no kids now. So this shocked Maria, and she was like, I thought we could make this work, but he was like, no, I'm leaving you. And she was so horrified by this that she actually took her two children and drowned them in the river. I am unclear because it's an oral legend. I'm unclear exactly how she drowned her children. Some say she threw them into the river and let the current take them away. Others say that she held them down and drowned them. Both are very upsetting stories that children should not hear. And then once she realized what she had done, she tried to go in after her children and take back what she had done. And she felt so terrible about it. She was like, I want to take this back. I can still save them. And so she tried to swim and get them, but she got towed under. And for a while she fought to the surface and then would go back in and try and get them. But eventually she just gave up and was like, I have done the worst possible sin and I'm going to just die. So it's said that because she was so racked with guilt and regret, but then also anger for being scorned, that her ghost still haunts that river and the riverbank and walks up and down the riverbank, still searching for her children. Now, what I think is interesting is that how this turned into like a horror, well, it already was horrific, but how it turned into a fear that is like told to children is that she still has the whole like, I love you, I hate you, don't leave me thing going on that apparently like plagues her and her haunted soul. And she tries to search for children that are like hers that she can try and love, but then she becomes angered and drowns them. It was like used like, don't go out at night or La Llorona will get you. Don't leave your parents' side or La Llorona will get you. Don't swim at night or La Llorona will get you. And some of these things I think are really helpful in a way of like keeping your children safe, because kids are naturally curious and I think that they like to explore and they feel invincible a lot of the time. At the same time though, it's such a terrible tale to be like, if you can hear her weeping, she's marked you as her next victim and she'll drag you in. It's like, this is horrifying. I remember being very young and just like laying in bed and wondering like, this is me being an early writer, like where are the boundaries to this legend? Like if this story is true, like what draws La Llorona to me? I'm like, is it when I put my feet on it? Like, it's like, is it when I'm walking around at nighttime? What counts as nighttime? Is it dusk? Is it when the streetlights come on? Where is she located? Like, what if I'm nowhere close to a river? What if I live right next to a river? Like, that's really scary because I had both of those experiences. Also, like, if she comes from Mexican folklore, does she just haunt only that particular river, or does she haunt all rivers? And I even got like so upset by it at one point that I remember thinking like, if I get up in the middle of the night for a glass of water or like to go to the bathroom, if I put my feet on the ground, will I hear her crying and will she come and get me? I was very upset by it. And I can't quite remember what took me out of like realizing that this was just something that frequently Latinx parents use with their children or say to their children. I've met a lot of other Latina people who tell me that this was also an experience they had. But it makes me wonder, like, what got me out of that fear? Because I remember being afraid of her and like Bloody Mary a lot. And they have some similarities. Mary, Maria, both showing up, like both being conjured and then marking you, like, and killing you. It's really scary. I'll have to do one of these episodes about Bloody Mary at some point. But what I think is really interesting is apparently when I dug into this like way more, um it was used as a warning for children to keep them safe, was kind of like the reasoning they used behind it. But I also found that this kind of like legend or mythology was also used to give like visualization to adulterous husbands or adulterous partners, and that La Llorona targets adulterous partners. I thought that was very interesting. But here's why, other than the obvious, this is why it was particularly scary to me and still is quite a frightening tale. So I think that a lot of humans, not everybody, but I think quite a few, have this like inherent fear of abandonment, or that someone will harm you physically, emotionally when you're the most vulnerable. So I can see it from both La Llorona's point of view and from the children's point of view. La Llorona's not from homicidality, but from the perspective of like having a child and having a partner no longer be interested right after you have a kid. And obviously this is hitting me hard because I just had a kid. I just had my first and only child. And I know right after she was born, I have never felt so vulnerable in my life. And while I was pregnant too, I was a very vulnerable person. And it's just like thinking of someone no longer, like a partner no longer being interested, or even, it doesn't even have to be a partner, like someone you thought could support you during this time. It could be a parent or a good friend. Just like thinking about someone leaving you when you need them the most is really, really scary. And then on the flip side, from the children's perspective, they are innocent children who are also extremely vulnerable and put implicit and complete trust in adults, especially their parents. And to think about them trusting a parent and it turns into their demise is just bone chilling to me. Another thing that makes it really scary is that unfortunately, this type of thing has actually happened. There are unfortunately many examples of this, like Andrea Yates and Susan Smith come to mind just off the top of my head, but I know there are more out there and I am not going to look them up. All of those particular two crimes that happened that I brought up actually happened when I was very young. So maybe that's why I was so afraid of it. I mean, it's already scary. Like, it's very easy to scare a child, and the world is still new and doesn't make sense. I mean, the world still doesn't make sense, and I'm an adult, but the world is new and scary. And when children start to understand that like adults can hurt them, that's like a really scary concept to think of, especially with a population so young and like dependent. And both of those cases happened when I was a young child. And so I think that it just was like, here was this legend that's been told to people for like a really long time and is kind of a joke amongst Latin American like groups of people, that their parents or grandparents kind of said this to them. And at the same time, this is when there was like huge media exposure coverage of these two very, very heinous, really upsetting crimes. So I think that definitely upped my fear about the whole tale. But overall, those are two of just very many stories that deeply frightened me when I was a child. And I am very curious. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts of, were you told about these before? Have you heard of El Chupacabra or La Llorona before? Have your parents or abuelos used these on you? Like, what was your experience with them? And if you're hearing this for the first time, I wonder what your reactions are to hearing these kinds of folk tales or legends, because they're kind of creepy. So thank you for listening to me ramble about my childhood fears and the little mini deep dive I did into both of those tales. And I will see you next time. Thanks to all you spooky souls out there for listening to Creepy Core and Folklore. Follow on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok if you're looking for more uncanny content. If you have your own tales to tell, you can email creepycoreandfolklore@gmail.com. If you liked this, please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, or tell a friend who might enjoy these stories to spread the word. If you're interested in dark fantasy, check out my Hollowverse series. Ashes is available now in paperback and ebook on Amazon and audiobook on Audible, and the sequel is underway. I'm Iona Wayland, and I'll see you next time.